How's it going, everybody? You're listening to Trail Tales. My name is Kyle O'Grady. I am a thru-hiker, I am a peak bagger, and every single week on this show, I chat with another thru-hiker, another peak bagger, or another hiking nerd like myself about their experiences on the trail. If you're a hiking nerd, or if that sounds interesting to you, please hit that subscribe button and tune in every single Wednesday. IBTAT, he's back on the show for a second episode. I'm so excited about it. This dude literally just finished the PCT not very long ago, so most of our conversation is about that, and we kind of focus in particularly quite a bit towards the end on what happened to him at the end of his thru hike. He had some super nasty weather. He was coming in pretty late and had a very unique finish because of that. So we talk all about that. We also get into some of the differences between his PCT thru hike and his Appalachian Trail thru hike, which he did in 2018. I was lucky enough to meet him a couple times on the trail that year. And we also just get into what he's been up to since he finished the PCT and what his content is going to look like going forward. It was a great chat. IBTAT, dude, when you hear this, thank you so much for coming on a second time, and let's do it again soon. As always, I really want to hear what everybody thinks of this episode. You can find me at Trail Tales Pod on Instagram. That's at Trail Tales Pod. trailtalespod@gmail.com is another thing as well. Shoot me an email or DM on Instagram with any sort of advice, feedback, comments, whatever you're going to say. I'd love to hear it. Facebook, Trail Tales, just search that. It should come up. Go do all of these things, and I will love you forever and ever. YouTube, folks, I have a YouTube channel now. It's Kyle Hates Hiking. If you go search that or follow the link to it in the show notes, I would really appreciate that. I will say straight up, I am no IBTAT, not even close, but I am having fun. I just hit 100 subscribers today, actually, which was pretty fast. It was a little bit less than a month, so I'm really stoked on that, and I'd love to get a couple more. So once again, Kyle Hates Hiking on YouTube. I will be posting all sorts of hiking related content because, contrary to the name, I don't actually hate hiking. So yeah, go check that out. Link in the show notes. Kyle Hates Hiking. Search that shit on YouTube. You know what to do. trailtalespod.com. If you're new here, go check out trailtalespod.com, the website to listen to some older episodes. Go back and listen to all 52 of the other episodes that I currently have out right now. That would be really appreciated. trailtalespod.com. With that said, I think we're going to keep the intro short this week, folks. I always say that, and I usually never follow through with it, but I'm actually going to do it this time. Let's get into the conversation I had with IBTAT, Appalachian Trail class of 2018 and PCT class of 2019. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to episode number 53 of Trail Tales. IBTAT, what's going on, man? Thanks so much for coming back for round two.
Yeah, brother, of course. You know me, I'll talk hiking all day, every day. It's good to talk to you again.
All day, every single day. Dude, so you just finished the PCT. Congrats. I should have said that before we started recording. Now I kind of feel like a jackass. But dude, fucking congrats on the PCT. First of all, 2 thru hikes back to back. I mean, AT 2018, PCT 2019. That is incredible. That's super impressive, dude. So congrats on like both of those thru hikes, honestly. I mean, I don't know if my body would have been up to that, so I just think that's so awesome, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, brother. Yeah, I need to probably go to the psychiatrist and get my head checked. You shouldn't be doing them back to back. That was a mental battle this last 6 months, but appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, we're going to talk all about the mental battle, too. I love talking about the mental shit on this podcast, so that's awesome. But let's start by just going over, like, what the fuck have you been up to since you finished? First of all, why don't you tell everybody when exactly you finished? Right now, it is November 15th, 2019. How long have you been back for, and what have you been up to since you finished the PCT?
Well, it's been a few weeks now. I finished October 25th, which, nobody finishes the PCT that late, but the crew I was rolling with, we managed to be damn near the last ones to Canada. But yeah, there was a lot of snow, and the last few weeks I've just been letting my body rest. I mean, I'm slowly recovering, but it's just my body's not there yet. It's funny because your mind is still going in through hiker mode, but your body's like, okay, it's time to take a little bit of a break. So I've basically just been sitting on my ass and letting my joints heal up. My knees are still screwed, my ankle's pretty messed up still, but we're slowly getting there.
Well, at least you have a good attitude about it. Sounds like you're definitely hurting, but like, I don't know. How do you feel in comparison to how you felt around this time after you finished the AT last year?
I think I'm a little bit better actually. I don't know if it's just because the AT beats you up more physically or not. But I recall last year when I got up the trail about a week and a half or so after I had gotten home. I woke up one morning, I couldn't even get out of bed. I like literally,
Damn.
rolled and fell on the floor. My joints had just locked up, and luckily I haven't had that problem this year. So, yeah, I don't know if my body just got acclimated to it. Probably not. It's just, I don't know what it was, but my body's actually responded a little bit better this year.
That's good to hear, man, for sure. I wonder if the fact that you had all that wear from last year, if that like kind of toughened you up for this time around, or if again, like you just said a second ago, it had something to do with the terrain on the PCT. I'm not really sure. All I know is that after I finished the AT in 2018, I had a lot of my friends that I hiked with, and a number of people I had on the show way back then. Shortly after we had finished the AT, we're all hurting pretty bad, and I don't want to just like completely hijack this and sound like an asshole, but I felt pretty fucking good for like a couple weeks after the AT. Like everyone was hurting, and I was just kind of like, yeah, I feel good. I even went for a couple hikes afterwards and a couple runs and shit. So I always think the recovery, the post through hike recovery, is kind of fascinating, and I've always wondered what it would be like for a trail that allegedly, because I've never hiked the PCT, but a trail that's allegedly a little bit less harsh on the joints like the PCT would be.
Yeah, I don't know, and that's good on you for doing that. They say when you get back from the trail, just don't sit on your ass. Like what I've been doing, I've been getting up and walking around and stuff, going on, short walks around the neighborhood just to keep my body going. But
yeah, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to get out and hike for sure, but I know to be smart about it, I just need to relax a little bit and take a breather. Who knows if, from trail to trail, it's just everybody's body responds differently.
Yeah, that's so true, honestly. Like I said, that was just my experience. You've been hanging out in Maine since you got back, right?
Yeah, the great state of Maine. I've been wanting to get up here for quite some time. Actually, ever since we, hiked through, as going through the 100-mile wilderness, and basically all of Maine was just gorgeous. And that whole experience just made an impact on me. I had hit Maine last year on the AT, like right at peak color season. So, the leaves were popping. It was just gorgeous, and I fell in love. So, ever since hiking through Maine on the AT, I've wanted to move up here, and I just made it happen. I've lived in the South in North Carolina for the past 4 years, and I'm a vagabond anyway. I was just the fact that I was there 4 years is shocking to me. Usually it's 2 years is my limit. I move on, but it was just a good excuse to pack up shop and head up here to the great state of Maine. I'm digging it, man.
Yeah, man, it is a tough time of year to like move to Maine though, or anywhere in the Northeast for that matter. I don't know about other people who live in the Northeast. I have quite a few listeners who live up here, but November is one of my least favorite months. So to go from like being on a thru hike like that to just kind of stuck inside. I know you said you've been getting outside a little bit, but not like actually hiking. I just feel like kind of in the short days too. That's what I should have said there. That's like the worst part about it. This might be a dumb question, but in North Carolina this time of year, after daylight savings, does it still get dark at like 4:30 down there, or do you get like a little bit more sun?
No, it's basically the same. The daylight hiking window is real short too. You just gotta get out there, and I'm not much of a night hiker, so yeah, it kind of sucks setting up camp at 3 p.m. and just waiting for the sun to go down. But you get out there and you do what you can.
Yeah, for sure. Did you guys get a decent amount of snow the other day at the beginning of the week? Because we here in Burlington, Vermont, we got like close to a foot, honestly. Like we got a shit ton of snow for this early on in November.
Yeah, I'm in southern Maine, and we didn't get anything.
You didn't get anything, really?
No, there were some flurries for like maybe an hour, but nothing stuck. Probably like maybe, I don't know, 50 miles north of here, they had about maybe an inch that stuck, but I don't know, we didn't get anything here.
Interesting, dude.
Moving up here, I was like, okay, we're going from snow to snow, but actually this has been quite lovely from what I had.
Well, here I am asking you about the shitty weather, but damn, dude, that's crazy. Like we got absolutely hammered the other day, and I guess I wasn't really paying too much attention to the forecast beyond just like the immediate like Burlington area, but I know the whites got pretty hammered just from, I think, just from the photos I've been seeing on Instagram, and certainly the Adirondacks got hammered as well. So I just kind of assumed that like all of New England got it, but then again, I guess southern Maine might not get it quite as much. You're living in okay, well, first of all, have you started at Hyperlight yet?
No, I haven't started yet. I've had a couple meetings with them. That was the real reason I moved up here. Well, aside from moving to Maine, which I want to do anyway, the reason I moved to Biddeford is, if you guys don't know, that's where Hyperlight Mountain Gear is based out of. I have an old mill building. It's just gorgeous. I actually come through here after my AT hike and visited Hyperlight. Just I wanted to meet everybody and see their whole operation, and it's pretty dialed in, and I was really impressed. So I had hit them up. I don't know, pretty close to finishing the PCT just to see if they're hiring. Like, oh, well, we'll get you in here. So I haven't started yet. Originally, I was gonna do whatever production for them, but from the meetings that I've had with them, we're thinking about doing some content collaborations
Oh, dude,
together.
that is the fucking dream right there, dude.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do. I mean, I'm the video photography guy, so that's kind of what I wanted to do eventually anyway. So they're kind of brainstorming ideas right now, and hopefully we'll get rolling on that soon.
Dude, I'm actually so stoked to hear that, like, because, I mean, what could be better? Like, you finish a through hike, you've produced all this content. How many freaking videos did you post on the PCT?
I think it would turn out to be like 165 or 166, something like that.
166. You produce 166 videos. You finish your through hike, and then you get to go work for a badass gear company and produce like more content. That is so freaking sweet, man. Like I said,
that's my dream, man. It's what I do anyway. So be able to do it for a company that I dig is just the icing on the cake right there. Because I'm going to be making videos regardless. But if I get to do it for a living, I mean, that's not many people get to do what they love for a living. And I've always just filmed videos of me hiking because I love doing it, but if I can translate it into a career, that's the ultimate right there.
Dude, that's just so incredible. I'm jealous too, honestly. That would be like if I could just like bullshit into my microphone and get paid for it, that would be amazing. Maybe someday, we'll see. But dude, speaking of creating all this content, speaking of your channel kind of post through hike, what are your plans for all that going forward? Beyond just what you're going to be doing with Hyperlight, I'm talking about your channel specifically because I was kind of browsing your content earlier, and it looks like most of what you've posted is, just the through hike vlogs. I know you had some stuff in between the AT and the PCT as well, but as someone who's starting to get into YouTube myself, who's starting to make a couple videos and has posted a couple videos already, I am just kind of curious about what you're going to be covering as far as content goes now that you've finish this second through hike.
Yeah, so whatever I do with Hyperlight, that's a separate thing. I always have my personal YouTube channel. I just love doing that, so I always have that. Now, I like making hiking videos, and you mentioned the videos I did put out after the AT, in between the AT and PCT. I'll do the gear videos. I'm not a real big fan of doing that. I mean, I'm just like every other through hike. I love talking about gear. Don't get me wrong. I'll nerd out on that for days, but the way I look at it is I get so many questions on a daily basis on, what gear to buy and what should I be using. And I never answer those questions because it's so subjective. I mean, backpacking gear is the most subjective thing on the planet. So I can tell you all day to go buy these shoes or these socks or this pack or whatever, and it might not work for you. But, I'll still do the gear videos, talk about what I used, what worked, what didn't, what I had to replace, that kind of stuff. Because people love hearing about that stuff. But my real passion is just getting out in the woods and filming that. So as soon as my body heals up, we'll be out on the trails up here in Maine and be filming that.
Even in the winter, yeah.
Oh yeah, I've living in the South for so long. I was not an experienced winter backpacker, and that's I've basically never done it before. Just day hiking and stuff like that. So on the PCT, it was the first experience I've had. I mean, I never picked up an ice axe in my life or used, micro spikes or crampons. That was all learning on the fly type thing. So now that I've got a little bit of mileage under my belt using that stuff, I want to give it a go. And you mentioned the Whites. You got snow, and I want to get over to the Whites and do some of those peaks up in the presidentials and stuff in snow. I think it's going to be dope. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing that all winter.
Dude, I'll tell you right now, a lot of people listening to this are going to be stoked to hear that. I've quite a few listeners who frequent the Whites, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the Whites, man, they're something special.
Oh, definitely. And they also know that I don't really fuck with winter too much. However, I do kind of want to start a little bit this year. I'm kind of nursing the injury right now, so I'm not going to be like fucking heading up Mount Washington this weekend or anything ridiculous like that. But I do kind of want to dabble with winter a little bit this year. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm not going to become a full-blown mountaineer, but I got to get my fix of hiking, so I'll be out there regardless. Just doing the typical weekend trips, maybe I'll get in a long section. But, I just need my fix of getting out in the woods because that's what keeps me sane in the off-season.
Dude, definitely. And you're in a pretty good location down there in southern Maine, too, because like you just said, the Whites really aren't that far, and then obviously you have all the stuff up closer to like Bethel, the southern Maine portion of the AT, the Mahoosucs, all that stuff. So you're pretty close to all that.
I got plenty of exploring to do, and there's so many sections that that we didn't go through on the AT that I need to go check out. So I'll be getting a map of the Whites, and we'll be exploring a little bit more of what we didn't cover on the AT for sure.
Have you ever heard about the Grafton Loop Trail before?
Somebody had mentioned that to me the other day, and I hadn't heard of it before. So, yeah, what's that all about?
Dude, I highly recommend this trail. So you've actually, it's about 40 miles, and obviously loop trail, the Grafton Loop Trail, it's a loop trail, which makes it ideal because it's like a mini through hike, but you only need one car, which a lot of those short through hikes, you obviously would need two, or you need a shuttle or something like that. So anyways, you've actually already done about 7 miles of it, if I recall correctly, because 7 miles of it coincides with the AT. It starts in Grafton Notch near Bethel, Maine. Let's see. So the Mahoosuc Notch, I'm sure you obviously remember that from your AT through hike. A little bit after that, you go over a mountain called Old Speck. And from there, like, there's just you can either follow the AT north, go up and over the Baldpates, and then the Grafton Loop Trail kind of cuts off from there, or you could go the other way if you're on top of Old Speck and cut back over to to Grafton Notch. But anyways, dude, I would highly recommend that trail. Like I said, it's about 40 miles. It's fucking awesome, dude. Like, it's the Mahoosuc, so like it's really hard hiking, but the views are like freaking sweet. And obviously you get to re-hike a pretty awesome part of the AT. One of the hardest sections of the AT, if I recall anyways. So I would highly recommend that. I think that would be a really cool video. I hiked it back when I was like 18. It was like my first ever solo backpacking trip, and I still like look back on it like super fondly because it was such an amazing hike. And you're pretty close, like I said, to Bethel, so you could definitely make that work.
Yeah, man, I'll check it out. I mean, I don't know if I want to do the Mahoosuc Notch in the wintertime.
Dude, definitely not. Also, to be clear, it doesn't actually go through the Mahoosuc Notch. It basically coincides like a couple miles after that, so you won't have to go through the notch again, which...
Yeah, you get to skip the notch and the arm, the worst parts of it. Both Speck arm was awesome, and the Baldpates were awesome, too. I think I got views on all those, so...
Yeah, you don't have to fuck with the arm either, which is pretty nice.
Yeah,
dude, definitely look into that. That's a really fucking cool trail. And there's also like designated campsites along the whole thing too. There's one shelter, the Baldpate shelter, that's on the AT part, but there's still like some established campsites with like the whole water, privy, all that shit. So it's an awesome trail, and not
I'm a fan of the privies. I'll be there for sure. There's no privies on the PCT, man. I got comfy with those on the AT.
Okay,
man.
Can I ask you a question about that? So not planned at all, but I've always wondered about this, and I might have asked it on an early episode I did about the PCT, but so like on the AT, it's pretty easy to find some privacy to go dig a cat hole, right? And I've never hiked on the PCT. I really haven't spent much time out west, so when I like think about going off trail to take a shit, it's like I feel like I would just be like in the open. Like, how do you find like a nice private place to take a shit on the PCT?
You don't. I mean, at least,
you don't.
At least,
oh damn!
Yeah, once you've done one through hike, you're pretty used to shitting around people. I know you hide in the AT, but after a certain point, you don't even care. You like just go off the trail and shit. It's like, somebody walks by in the morning, sees you, just wave at each other. Hey, have a good hike, man. Enjoy your shit. It's just one of those things.
Oh my god!
So on the PCT, all the people that you have known through hike before, it's like whatever. I mean, it's just part of the trail lifestyle. Nobody really cares. You'll see the newbies like trying to hide behind a rock in the middle of the desert. It's like, just give it up, dude.
Dude,
would
that's
you rather
gonna be
just
me,
shit and have people see you, or would you want to run off trail and get bit by a rattlesnake. Just dig a hole and shit. Don't worry about it.
Dude, that's so
there's,
crazy.
there's not much privacy. But the crowds are less on the PCT, so even though you're in the open, you generally, if you time it out right, you can have a little bit of privacy shitting in the desert.
Dude, that's fucking crazy. I don't know, man. I don't know. Like I like my privacy. I'll say that, and that's one thing that's always made me wonder.
Well, see, I sound like I'm like trying to shit in front of people, but the PCT, I was worried about it because I'd never hiked in the desert before, and half these goddamn plants out there, I don't know what the fuck they are, and I'm not trying to wipe my ass with a cactus anytime soon. So I didn't even care. I just go, I get off the trail out of respect for other hikers, but I'm not gonna go searching around the desert where there's snakes and plants I've never fucking seen before and try to shit by them.
That's so fucking funny. Damn.
You get up to the northern part, you get to Oregon and Washington, it's just like AT. You can have your privacy all day, but in the desert, man, you better get used to shitting in front of people because there ain't nowhere to hide out there.
Dude, what if this is so fucked up, but like what if one of your like viewers is like hiking by and they're like, oh, that's IBTAT taking a shit? Like how fucking funny would that be?
I'd say, what's up, man? Good morning. You want
It's so fucking good.
Ain't no thing, I don't care.
Damn,
I mean,
dude.
I got naked on top of McAfee now with like 30 fucking people watching. It's not like there's probably hundreds of pictures of my ass out there from the AT, but on the internet, but I don't really care.
No shame. I love it. No shame over here. Gotta own it.
My game, man.
That's so good.
Right.
A second ago, you said how the PCT has less people than the AT. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because again, as someone who wants to thru hike the PCT in the future, my understanding was that it might be like slightly less crowded, but for the most part, there's still a lot of people that are thru hiking the PCT. So that kind of confused me.
Yeah, I mean, the crowds are still there, don't get me wrong. I mean, you can thank, Reese Witherspoon for that. Ever since the movies came out, it's like, there's just been an insane jump of people. I mean, you hear people just recently, actually, I think the first registration for your PCT permit was like 2 weeks ago or something like that. And I was seeing all these posts on Instagram like, oh, I'm the 7,000th person in line to register.
That's
it's like,
fucking
what the hell?
ridiculous.
And when I registered for my permit, it wasn't any different. I got there reasonably early in the waiting room or whatever online, and I was still like number 3,000 in line. So, not now. Everybody that registers doesn't get out there. They just, people get permits just for the hell of it. But I mean, I recall being on Springer Mountain early April, and there was probably 20 tents on Springer on April 4th when I started. When I started the PCT, it was like literally I was the only one there. I mean, I started early in the day from Campo, but I literally had the monument by myself standing in the middle of the desert. It's like, okay, I'm doing this whole damn trail by myself. That's what it felt like. Now, you'll see people out there, but the crowds are nowhere near the AT. At least in my experience anyway.
Yeah, dude, I'm kind of glad to hear that because, like without getting into the whole fucking debate on whether or not AT is too crowded or, all that stuff, I do tend to not like to be around like a shit ton of people. I don't like to be by myself either. I guess it's like, shit, Kyle, you got to pick one, but I don't know. I was a little bit concerned about the PCT, or at least a northbound thru hike at the PCT being like as crowded as the AT was, but that's a little bit reassuring. That being said, I still might go southbound. We'll see.
Well, what's great about the PCT is you'll find, like, I don't know, for me, I early on the AT, I would camp by shelters. Usually, I wouldn't stay in the shelters, but I like camping by them just because of the shitter and there's always a decent water source. Now, you wouldn't have to stay in the shelter. You can still get away from people. Mm-hmm. What's beautiful about the PCT is even if there's crowds out there, it's so vast, especially I'm talking about the desert in Southern California. It's so vast. Like you can literally set your tent up anywhere. I mean, you're not going to be by water. You're hauling water and dry camping, but it's just there's so many spots to put a tent out there. You can get your privacy. And then, if you wanted to camp by yourself, do that, and you can still hike with people during the day. It's just, I wouldn't stress about it. You can, I mean, I generally camped by myself through the first 700 miles without people around. It was awesome.
Yeah, man. Interesting. So I kind of want to go back to our last episode. One of the things that I had asked you was what you were potentially going to do differently on the PCT compared to what you did on the AT. And I recall one of the things that you said was that you were going to possibly look into hiking with other people. It sounds like you did the AT mostly solo, and you potentially wanted to kind of maybe change that a little bit on the PCT. You didn't like completely commit to it, but you sounded like that was something you wanted something you wanted to explore at least. So I wanted to ask you about that. Did you end up kind of hiking with some people on the PCT? It sounds like you did that first section by yourself. Did things kind of change after that?
So yeah, I mean, last year, getting off the AT, I don't know. I in my head, I wanted to be more social going into the PCT, and I really did. But once I got out there, it's like, flashback to, I mean, why I hiked to begin with. I hiked to get away from people. I mean, that's where obviously I love the activity and I love being out in the woods, but part of that is just being alone in the woods. That's one of my favorite aspects of through hiking. So I went with the intentions of being more social, but that didn't really happen. Now I did hike with people a couple occasions in the PCT. All through the Sierras, I hiked with somebody, or the majority of the Sierra anyway, and then up through Oregon and Washington, I got in with a group. So yeah, I guess I succeeded in that, but when I was with those people, there's nothing against them. They're all awesome, but I found myself craving that solitude immediately once I started being around people. So it's just the way I'm wired. I hike for solitude. So, but I mean, in the PCT, especially the Sierra, it was just a smart move being with somebody. And obviously the last section, if you guys follow me on YouTube or Instagram, what we went through there. So being with the group then was kind of necessary as well.
Yeah, man, it makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you this. It sounds like most of the reason why you prefer the solo thing is just because, like you just literally just said, that's just the way you're wired. So I'm sure that's most of it. I am kind of curious to at least get your thoughts on the whole vlogging thing. Do you think having the camera out and being focused on producing all this content also played any sort of role at all in your decision or your desire to want to hike solo?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a big part of it too. When you're hiking with people and you do what I do, filming and vlogging all day long, I mean, nobody wants to hike with me anyway because I'm constantly stopping to film shit or set up the camera and walk past it, that kind of stuff. And it's an all day thing. So, to hike with me it would be a pain in the ass anyway. And when I would hike with people, I found, at least I don't know if it came through in the videos, but I found those videos not to be as good because I had to concentrate on being with that person, hiking around them and talking with them. Whereas normally I would just stop and set up the camera 500 fucking times in a mile or film this and film that. So I found that hiking with other people kind of took away from what, my vlogging style anyway.
Interesting. See, I wasn't sure if you were going to agree with that or not. So I guess that definitely makes sense though. Another thing, kind of going back to our last episode, I know you had mentioned that by the end of your Appalachian Trail through hike, you were not burnt out on through hiking. You were not burnt out on the Appalachian Trail, but it did sound like you were pretty burnt out on the whole vlogging thing. So I'm curious to know I'm curious to know if you got burnt out on the vlogging thing by the end of the PCT as well.
I didn't get burned out this time around. I mean, there was certainly days where I didn't want to film, but I didn't get burnt out like I did last year. Maybe because I've already had a season of it under my belt and I was used to it. But you get so into a routine. I mean, waking up and before anything else, reaching for your camera so you could film your wake up routine. That just became so normal to me. It's just what I did. So I didn't get burnt out on it. I was certainly the week after I got home, it was weird not filming myself. Filming yourself making coffee for 180 days in a row and not doing it. It actually felt weird not talking to a camera in the morning.
Yeah, dude.
But as far as vlogging goes, I wasn't tired of this trail. I could have done it longer. It's just I love doing that stuff.
Dude, that's really good to hear because again, it did sound like you were kind of not like getting sick of it in like a long-term thing, but like it did sound like you were, like I just said, getting pretty burnt out on the vlogging part of it by the end. How about the actual, and we're going to talk about, the weather and stuff at the end of your thru hike in just a minute here, but how about just getting burnt out on the thru hike itself? So like I said, a few seconds ago, during our last conversation, you had said that you were pretty stoked on the AT all the way through. You wanted to keep going, like you would have kept going if you could have. How did that kind of compare to your experience at the end of the PCT?
Yeah, the AT, I didn't want to get off. I was ready to, I could have won another 500 to 1,000 miles. Mentally and physically, I was still good to go. Now, the PCT was a little different story. It was so mentally draining, especially. I mean, my body was getting towards the end of like, okay, asshole, it's time to stop doing this. But I would have physically, I can always push through stuff. Yeah, but mentally, I was pretty fucking drained towards the end. I mean, you always hear how mentally draining the PCT is, and it's true. And everybody, especially everyone with my group, we all felt it. And I think you could see it, even though we didn't discuss it amongst each other, you could tell just by looking at somebody like, okay, we're drained here, man. We need to, it's time to be done. So I was actually the moment we finished and crossed the Canadian border, I felt a sense of relief for sure that I was done because of what I'd just gone through. So yeah, it was a lot different experience in the PCT this year.
Dude, that's pretty incredible. And kind of speaking to what you just said there, when I watched your like final PCT video, I could almost like see it in your eyes and like hear it in your voice that you were like stoked on finishing, obviously, but that you were also kind of ready to be done. Why don't we talk about the weather at the end? So I put up a poll on my Instagram story yesterday, and a lot of people had questions about this. So obviously, like, it's all over the videos and stuff, but I'm still kind of curious to hear about it, right from the source here. You guys got some snow at the end of the PCT. Like, shit, how did that all go down?
Yeah, it turned into a winter backpacking trip pretty quick. So the first experience we got with snow was White Pass, and then Stevens Pass it was a blizzard. So I basically, going into Stevens Pass, I had hiked through 10 hours of rain. From the time I woke up to the time I got to camp, it just pissed on me, and it got progressively worse all day. So it turned out to be like 10 hours of hiking through the rain. It was cold rain, and I was miserable. And I set up my tent next to a lake, and I was literally 7 miles from Stevens Pass, but I was drained and just needed to get out of the rain. So I set up, woke up the next morning to a blizzard. It was, I mean, if you follow me on Instagram, you saw that post, and I had like the epic ice beard and everything else. And it was just, yeah, I woke up to a whiteout, and there's probably, I don't know, 6 inches of snow on the ground, and it didn't stop. So that was the first experience with snow. And then we got hammered again towards the last stretch, the last 60 miles. Well, pretty much the last 180 miles, but the last 60 miles was like up in elevation. For those of you that are familiar with the PCT, the last 60 miles, you go up in elevation and you don't come back down till you reach the Canadian border. So you're up there and you're just in the snow. So we were going through, at certain times, waist deep snowbanks. And there was, I mean, you can see the trail. So it was basically gut hooks all day. There were some points of the trail you could see it where it was kind of made a divot and kind of pick out where the trail was. But many times throughout the day, we lost the trail. We didn't even know where it was at. It was just, it was sketch as hell. And we were, a lot of those passes towards the end, Rock Pass in particular, we were causing mini avalanches as we were going through there.
Damn, dude.
It was just a sketch section of trail. And I think that's why we were so relieved to be done, because, there was plenty of times I woke up that last stretch and wondering, is this going to be the day that I get covered in snow and not get back out? That was a real threat the last 60 miles or so.
Dude, that's so incredible. So I was going to ask you if the weather was the reason why you felt like you were ready to be done at the end of the PCT versus the way that you felt towards the end of the AT. Would you say that's accurate? Do you think that, I know it's a hypothetical, so you never know for sure, but if the weather had held out for you on the PCT and you hadn't been hiking through those dangerous conditions, do you think that you would have wanted to keep going potentially like you did at the end of the Appalachian Trail?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I would have, to be honest with you, because like I said, my body wasn't quite wrecked. It was getting towards the end, but physically, I could have went farther. But yeah, just because of what we went through the last 60 miles, we were just mentally done. Yeah, it was. If you look back to the AT and the last section, like going through the 100-mile wilderness, and then hiking into Baxter, it's like really flat terrain, and it's just relaxing. You can reflect on everything about your previous months of hiking. Whereas in the PCT, we were pushed to that maximum stress level, like all the way up to the very end. So yeah, that was definitely the reason why I was ready to be done. It was just so mentally draining, and waking up and putting on frozen boots every morning,
Dude,
and you
fuck
can't feel your
that.
fingertips, and I mean, my fingertip is still numb. I was getting signs of frostbite there towards the end, and the tip of my index finger is still numb, like 3 weeks
Damn,
later.
dude.
So yeah, it was just, and then by the last 60 miles took us. So if you're a through hiker, you're doing what 20 to 30 miles a day towards the end of your through hike pretty easily. The last 60 miles took us 7 days to do, to give you an idea of
Damn.
how difficult pushing through that snow was. So 7 days to do 60 miles.
And I'm assuming that was all in one resupply too?
That was on one resupply. We actually hauled out
Fuck, dude.
about 8 or 9 days worth of food apiece.
A fucking week of
And
hiking through the snow and the cold like that on one resupply without any towns, without any showers, hot showers, any of that stuff. That's fucking incredible, man. Wow.
yeah, we were carrying Sierra away. I mean, I sent home all my winter gear, obviously after the Sierra, not thinking we'll need it again. But I had to rebuy all that shit. So I had to buy new ice axe, which I only up having to use one time going down Rock Pass, and then micro spikes. I ended up buying again. So basically, we had to all of us were rebuying all winter gear for that last 60 miles of trail.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, it was a winter backpacking trip for sure. But we're just so luckily I was with a group. We're all stubborn as hell, and it was no hesitation. It was just like, okay, fuckers, we're going. We're making it to Canada
Mhm.
one way or another. So the group I had gotten in with, it was me and three other dudes, and those guys are fucking kick ass. Um, Nobody hesitated. We were all smart about it and all agreed on decisions and things like this. But it was like we're making it to fucking Canada one way or another.
Yeah,
So
man.
yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Now, were you hiking around a lot of other people, like right before or during the first bit of the snow? I'm just curious to see what other people in your situation did. Do you know of other people that like just called it there? Do you know of other people that like skipped around, if that was even fucking possible? Like, I don't even know. Like, did other people that you were around specifically make different decisions and not kind of persevere and still fucking bring yourself to the end like you did?
So here's what happened. I got into Stevens Pass, right, and the big blizzard, the original blizzard I hiked through, and I needed to dry my shit out. So I took a zero in town, and there was other hikers that had done the same thing, got into town. They were just waiting out to see what the weather did, and so I started rallying some troops together because I was like 100%, I'm going either way.
Mm-hmm.
But I was trying to talk some other people into going with me. So I'd actually recruited two hikers, and then one of them bailed the night before I was heading out, and the next one bailed the morning of. So
Damn.
I ended up going out by myself, and I had known of another group that went out a day before me. So in my head, I was thinking maybe I could catch them, but in all reality, I probably won't, just because I'm by myself going solo through snow, so it's going to be slow going.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I'd caught up with that group. Like I was pushing big miles the first 2 days, and I actually caught up with them to join their group, which is probably the only reason I made the border. But there was other people, like a lot of hikers in town. I would say 90% of them, 95% of them bailed and said, "Screw this, we're not
Mm-hmm.
going. This is the end of our hike." So I managed to recruit two people originally, but everybody else I talked to said, "Fuck it, we're done. This is not worth it."
Yeah,
Which
dude.
is completely understandable.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
for sure.
it's just that's some sketchy ass shit. So there's no shame in that whatsoever.
Dude, I'm trying to think of like what I would do, because like I said this earlier in our conversation, but I'm not a winter hiker. I haven't really done it, or at least camped like overnight, like backpacking, winter backpacking, I should say. I haven't really done it, so maybe I need to try it, or maybe I would go for it in that circumstance. But dude, I honestly, that's a tough decision. That's something I'm gonna have to think about.
So here's the deal, Kyle. You're going to get this when you do the PCT. This is across the board, year after year. The fear mongering on the PCT is the stupidest thing of all time. I got fear mongered many times going into the Sierra. You're going to get it from people like, oh, you'll talk to outfitters or hostel owners or whatever, local people who do day hikes and weekend trips up there. Oh, don't go up there. It's too dangerous. Well, this is what you do. You go up there and you see it for your fucking self.
Oh,
Because you don't
dude,
know
absolutely.
what you're capable of. and you get these people are getting inside your fucking head, and mentally you quit before you even attempted it physically, which is the stupidest fucking thing in my eyes. Get up there and see it for yourself. Now I was in full, preparedness to bail if need be. I was going to go up there solo regardless and see it for my fucking self. It was too sketch. I've said it time and time again, no trail is worth my life. You live to hike another day, but I need to see this shit for myself. And I think people don't give themselves nearly enough credit of what their body is actually capable of. You give up mentally way, way, way before you give up. Your body gives up physically. So get up there, see it for yourself. And if it's too sketch, then you can bail and say, hey, at least I fucking tried.
Dude, I'm actually so glad you just said that. I had a similar circumstance on the AT. Now, it's not similar in that the conditions weren't nearly as like drastic or dangerous, I guess. But when I was going through Pennsylvania on my thru hike in 2018, there was a shit ton of rain, as I'm sure you remember from that year. And there was a part of the trail that was about 20-ish miles north of where I was that allegedly was impassable because of a river that had flooded over the trail. And we had been getting reports, like probably starting about a day before we got to Duncannon, we had been getting reports about this. Oh, this is flooded. It's completely impassable. We heard a million different stories from people. And pretty much every northbound thru hiker that was in that general vicinity was holed up in Duncannon for a couple days there while people were kind of waiting for the weather to change for the better. And I remember there was pretty much everybody except for myself and a group of people I was hiking with all decided that they were either going to just skip ahead or they were going to like go ahead and then hike southbound or just like fucking stay there for like a week, like all this crazy shit. And it was all based on the rumors. And myself and the other guys I was hiking with, we had the same attitude that you just talked about there. And we were like, okay, shit, well, you know what? Maybe it is fucked. Like, maybe we can't pass it, but we're going to fucking see it for ourselves before we decide to hike or take a ride 100 miles north and then hike southbound and then just fucking, like, mess up our whole, like, flow, I guess. We were like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to see it for ourselves. So all the other groups around us, they did shit like that. They either skipped it or they went north and hiked southbound, and we passed a couple of them later, but we just said, fuck it. We went to the river, and it wasn't great, but it wasn't like impassable either. Like, we were able to get across it. And that night after we did that, we were all like talking to each other at the campsite, and we were like, damn, if we had listened to everybody else that hadn't even seen that shit for themselves, we would have been kind of screwed, or at least been in a less ideal situation than we were. So that's definitely a solid piece of advice. Again, I can't speak for the PCT, but even for the AT, don't listen to the fear mongering. If people are saying things are impassable or saying things are dangerous, definitely consider it, but don't let other people make those decisions for you. I think that's an awesome lesson, IBTAT. I'm glad you were able to kind of share that there. Let's go back to the snow a little bit here before I get us too sidetracked. How many miles did you hike in like those shitty winter conditions at the end?
It was probably around 180 miles, about 180 miles, I think. Now there were sections in between there that, you were down in elevation, got out of the snow, but we started running in the snow basically 180 miles out from the Canadian border.
Dude,
and
that's
then the last 60,
crazy.
yeah, right. And the last 60 miles it was all snow. It was just, we were up in elevation, and it was snow all the way to Canada, basically, until we literally like 3 miles to the border, you start dropping down in elevation. But yeah, and then what we'd gone through in the Sierra, you're up in the snow too. So for someone who had, going back to the previous point, for someone like me who has never hiked in snow on a regular basis before, and I made it through. So, you're capable of way more. So just get up there and see it for yourself. But, if you watch my YouTube videos, I was cursing the snow like the whole fucking time. I still hated it, but I went there to thru hike the PCT. So, under any conditions, any variables, any obstacles, I was going to do it. So yeah, I'm going to bitch about it, but I'm going to get through it too.
Dude, and at the end of the hike too, it's like the most at least in my experience doing the AT, the end was the most like mentally taxing part of the whole trail by far. And to face those like super tough conditions at the very end, at the hardest part of the trail mentally, again, in my opinion, like that fucks with me, dude. Like I'd like to think I'm pretty stubborn. I'd like to think that I would be able to push on through that shit, but it definitely would not be an easy decision. You made it sound earlier like you were pretty gung-ho on just continuing. Like, did you have any hesitation at all? Did you consider for any time potentially not continuing on? Obviously, like I'm sure you're glad you did and looking back on it, but before you actually set out in the snow when you knew it was coming, did you ever kind of hesitate like that?
It crossed my mind, like, what if I can do it? There's never the moment in time where I said I'm not going to try. That was
Sure,
100%. I'm
sure.
going up there and seeing it. But yeah, it definitely did cross my mind. Like, maybe I'm physically not up to doing this because I'm not experienced hiking in the snow, and especially going out there alone originally. Yeah, it definitely crossed my mind that I wouldn't be able to do it, and that would have sucked because being that close to the end. At this point, you've already hiked over 2,500 miles, and you're so goddamn close to the end. It's like that was a driving force, knowing that we were so
Hmm.
close. Now, if it would have been like the last 400 miles, going, if I knew I was going through that, knee deep to waist deep snow for 400 miles, then I probably would have strongly considered it. But being so close to the end, it's like, oh my God, I can taste that poutine in Canada. I can't give up. Not
Dude,
this
yeah,
close to the
you
end.
said that in your last fucking video. I was cracking up at that shit. You're like, I can fucking
And
taste that.
the first meal I had when I got to Canada was fucking poutine.
Man of your word. That's what I like to hear. That's so fucking funny.
Oh yeah, man, it's good shit.
Damn. So fucking good, dude. I'm sure you've been asked to compare the AT to the PCT a million fucking times now that you've done them both back to back pretty much. So I don't want to like completely beat this to death, but I am curious, not only because you've done both trails, but again, because you did them so close together and like there wasn't that much time for shit to kind of slip your mind, between the two of them, and you were able to kind of compare them like so closely. So let's just go over some of this stuff real quick. On my AT through hike, again, never hiked the PCT, never really been out west. On my AT through hike, people would always say that the AT was physically more difficult than the PCT. Now, sounds like that might be true. However, I also always kind of took that with a grain of salt because I was like, of course this motherfucker thinks the AT is harder because he's literally hiking the AT right now. So I am kind of curious about, I want to hear you compare them physically. Which one did you think was tougher?
So, when you ask through hikers that who have done both trails, generally speaking, I would say most of them say the AT is harder physically than the PCT, and I think that's fairly accurate on a decent weather year. Now, this particular year, with the weather and the conditions we went through, I felt, I mean, my joints were obviously messed up more from the AT, just from the elevation change, but I felt just as drained physically, I think, over the course of the whole trail on the PCT as I did the 8. So I think that was just the conditions maybe that we hiked through.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the Sierra this year with as much snow that was up there, going across, miles of snow fields, in sun-cupped city, that shit is draining on your body. And you have the sun beating down on you, and you're going across snow. I mean, that is physically demanding as hell.
Yeah,
And
man.
you're only allowed, you can only do, at least I can only do one pass a day through the Sierra. So that pretty much limits you to like 10 to 12 miles, maybe 15 miles a day if you're lucky. But it takes you all day to do that. It's just physically, it just wrecks you. Now, obviously, everybody's going to be different. And the PCT, yeah, people say, well, you finish this PCT faster, even though it's longer mileage. Well, you are going through a lot flatter terrain. Oregon is generally flat for the most part, and there's large stretches in the desert that are really flat too. So you can push those bigger mileage days if you want to. But my body was wrecked after the PCT too. So I think what you'll hear most from most through hikers is the PCT is a little easier physically, but it wasn't the case for me. My body was still wrecked. So
Yeah, man. And that's one thing I feel like I can't really appreciate, having never hiked on the PCT, is the weather and how that impacts not just the physical aspect of things, but the mental aspect of things. And that's what I was going to kind of ask you about next is, now I feel like this is a little bit of a loaded question. I feel like it's easier to compare the physical difficulty of two trails to the mental difficulty of two trails because that's going to be like so subjective and depend on each hiker's experience on both trails. So obviously, just
right.
in your circumstance, I'm not asking you to make like a objective, like generalized standard here. Just for your situation, which trail was more mentally taxing, the PCT or the AT?
100% the PCT. Mentally, it drained the shit out of me. And like I said, especially towards that last stretch, but going through the Sierra too, it was very mentally draining. I mean, so going back to the Sierra, so basically your whole day is broken up into, you wake up, at the ass crack of dawn before the sun comes up, because you have to hike, these passes when the snow is still hard, or else you're just sinking into the shit. So you're waking up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. You're hiking in the dark for like, between 3 and 5 miles to get to the base of a pass, hopefully getting over the pass before the sun hits it. And then you're hiking down this pass, which are generally the south sides, if you're going northbound, are sketchy as hell. Just ice chutes basically. And so you're mentally drained from that. Like, thank you, I survived this pass. But now you got to go over a river crossing. And when I hit the Sierra, we not only had the snow, but by the time I entered the Sierras, which was June 18th, a lot of the river crossings in the Sierra are extremely dangerous. But by the time I got there, the snow bridges, so if you go there early, you'll have snow bridges to cross, right, that are, pretty damn thick. By the time I got there, the weather had warmed up enough to where the snow bridges were melting away. And I actually, had a couple close calls, which we can talk about if you want. I had one snap on me. Actually, I didn't put it wasn't in a video. But yeah, that was sketchy as hell. So now you have to cross these rivers. Now that's draining you mentally. Like, fuck, is this, I got over the pass, but now I'm going to be killed. I'm going to be rushed away in water. It was, that was the whole experience through the PCT and the Sierra section. It was just mentally all fucking day long. So by the time you get to camp, you're just like, forget the physical side. You're drained mentally, and you pass right the fuck out.
Damn, dude, that's incredible. Fuck, like I don't even. There's a lot there.
Am I painting a good picture for the Pacific Crest Trail? Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny too because I talked to buddies on the PCT this year who had never hiked the AT before, and they're asking me that same question, the physical and mental difference. And I would tell them all these horror stories about the AT, like, oh fuck, you're going straight up the mountain, you're going straight down, and it sucks, and you're climbing Mount Everest like 30 times or whatever the fuck it is, the statistic. And they're like, man, you're not painting a good picture of the AT. But I tend to talk about all the gnarly shit and then stray away from the good shit, just to put the fear of God into people. I guess I'm fear mongering the shit out of them too.
Nah, dude, you're telling it like it is. How about I kind of want to ask how your Appalachian Trail through hike influenced your PCT through hike. So doing them so closely together like that. I kind of asked you a similar question in our last conversation. I asked you what you were planning on doing differently from the AT. And I kind of want to ask that again in a pretty similar way, but I'm going to phrase it a little bit different. How did through hiking the Appalachian Trail the year before influence through hiking the PCT this past year?
So I don't think much changed. The reason why a hike is the most important thing out there, I hike these long trails because I love being out in the wilderness for an extended period of time and doing my own thing and just living as free as fucking possible. And I knew that going into the AT mentally, even though I had never hiked a mile, as a through hiker, I had that mentality going in the AT. So that whole side of things never changed. It was easy transition because I'm like, okay, I'm going out here, and you got these assholes who are like, oh, I'm doing 30 miles right off the bat. Well, my first day on the PCT, I think I did 15 miles. Like I was an experienced through hiker from the year before. I knew what my body was capable of, but screw it, man. I'm going to take the same mental approach and enjoy the shit out of this thing because I'm going to milk it for all it's worth. And I don't want to go back to the real world anytime soon. So, you hike one trail and you, for the most part, get your gear dialed in. Obviously things are going to change a little bit, maybe from trail to trail, but as a previous through hiker, you're pretty much know what you need to carry and, your gear and all that stuff. But the whole mental side of going into it saying, I'm on fucking vacation, I'm going to enjoy every moment of this. It was just the way I did it the year before.
Interesting. Again, I feel like this is kind of a loaded question, mostly because the end of your PCT hike was so much different than the end of your AT hike. But I did kind of want to ask you about finishing the PCT and like what that felt like for like finishing a through hike for the second time, right? Because I know when I finished the AT, I was like fucking ecstatic. Like it was absolutely amazing. And part of me thinks that maybe I'll never feel that way again, even if I finish another long distance hike, because it's just not the same the second time around. So I want to ask you about that. I know too that because of the weather circumstances at the end, that certainly, well, I guess I shouldn't speak for you, but I'm guessing that might have played a role in how you felt at the end. But can you just kind of talk about that a little bit?
It was very, I mean, so the actual literally finishing the trail, you feel the same way. It's just you're ecstatic and you're it's hard to describe. So just remember what you were feeling when you were walking up the Mount Katahdin. And for me, the entire time I was hiking the AT, I mean, you see pictures of that Mount Katahdin sign, and it is so damn iconic. And all throughout the AT, as I was hiking, even early on, I would have that image of that sign burned into my head. Like I cannot wait to see this sign that I've been obsessing about over for so many years, to actually see it and hold it and touch it and wrap my arms around the whole thing. It was just, I had that image in my head the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the same mentality for the PCT with the monument. You see so many pictures of that monument, so many, border or finishing pictures from people. And you're like, man, I wonder what it would be like to actually be standing there after having walked 2,653 miles. And it was everything you would imagine. Like you're walking up to that monument and you're like, holy shit. It's one thing. So I'll put it in perspective. So let's say you hike like McAfee Knob. McAfee Knob is iconic on the AT, right? Everybody goes up there and you see so many pictures of that ledge of people standing on it. But when you through hike, you would walk 700 miles to see that thing. There's
Mm-hmm.
something to be said about that whole journey, and knowing that you're standing at a monument, thousands of miles from where you started, and you went there by foot. Is pretty fucking special.
Yeah,
so
man.
The emotions you feel at that moment are completely unexplainable. It's just, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. It's just an unbelievable feeling. I don't know.
Yeah, man, that's incredible. We're getting towards the end here. I do have a couple more questions though, and we're also going to get to a story as well. So like I said earlier, I did an Instagram poll yesterday, and there was 2 questions that a lot of people entered there. A lot of people wanted to hear the answers to these questions. One of them we're going to get to at the very end, right before we're done, but this other one here has to do with your lost camera. So you were kind of talking about that a little bit before we started recording. But why don't you explain what happened there, and why don't you explain if you ever got that camera back or not?
Yeah. I'm still butthurt about it. Yeah, I lost my camera. So this year, my history of breaking cameras is it's notorious. I broke 3 cameras on the Appalachian Trail when I was vlogging that thing, due to weather, rain and everything else. And the PCT, I upgraded my camera gear and carried a full frame Sony camera this year, which I'm glad I did for photography reasons alone. I mean, I want to take some unbelievable pictures this year. So I carried my camera on a capture clip, which is basically just a clip that straps to your hooks to your shoulder strap, so it's easy access. And apparently, so going into Stevens Pass when I had woken up in that blizzard, I was hauling ass into town to get out of the weather, and the bolt that keeps the clip attached to my strap had gotten loose, unbeknownst to me, and I was like tripping in the snow the whole like 7.5 miles into Stevens Pass. And one time I tripped apparently, and like the bolt came loose, and my camera ended up in a snowbank somewhere. I had got down to Stevens Pass is a ski resort there, so I got down in there. And luckily, the ski patrol, there's people, the ski resort wasn't open, but luckily there was ski patrol in there. And my hands were numb, and I had a ice beard, down on my chest. And I was like really miserable. Like I was in bad shape. And luckily they had let me in there to warm up, and they actually had a washer and dryer, let me dry my clothes.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, I had my pack sitting there, went over there, and that's when I realized my camera wasn't on my strap. And I just had this moment of where my stomach just dropped, and I'm like, holy shit, it's up there on the pass somewhere. And I was hiking through knee-deep snow, so the chances of going up there and finding it was slim to fucking none.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, that's it. There goes my camera. I left my contact information with the ski patrol there in case somebody finds it in the spring. And I've had a bunch of followers of mine that live in the area. They're going to go up there with snowshoes this winter and try to find it for me. But, I've accepted the fact that my camera's gone, and hopefully I can get a new one soon. It sucks,
Damn,
but
man.
is like I said, my track record of losing gear. I mean, I use that gear. I don't baby the shit. I carry cameras out there and to vlog with them, and I beat the hell out of them on a daily basis. So if they break, they break. But it still sucks either way.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you really can't baby them though. Like you're gonna miss shots, you're gonna miss content if you're doing that. So fuck it. You might as well.
Yeah,
Shit's
fuck
gonna
it. So I
happen.
ended up filming. I think the last 3 weeks or so, whatever it was, I am filming with my iPhone, which was completely fine because I'd done that a lot on the AT after breaking camera after camera. So iPhones still do the trick. It's just photography wise, I was missing my camera for sure that last stretch.
Yeah, it is what it is, man.
Yeah, no worries.
Why don't you tell a story from the PCT? So I don't know if you remember IBTAT, but at the end of these episodes, I usually like to have my guests share a story from one of their hikes. Now, I kind of gave you a heads up. I gave you a heads up before we started recording. Probably should have given you more heads up. That's my bad. But if there's any story that you think is worth sharing here from your PCT, usually I do any hike, but since this is round 2, I kind of want to do a PCT story. Yeah, dude, I'd be stoked to hear one.
So for those of you that follow me on YouTube, I try to most of that shit's in there, and I try to film as much as possible when I'm vlogging these hikes. Obviously, I can't get everything in there, but there were so many sketchy times in the Sierra. I guess I can give you a couple stories that I can recall.
Sure, man.
Speaking about those snow bridges, so generally when you hike through the Sierras, if you go in early, you're gonna, like I said, you're gonna have snow bridges to cross a lot of these rivers. But when I entered the Sierras, like I said, it was starting to warm up and they were melting. So now this never got on video, but there was one point in time, I think it was leading up to Mather Pass, which Mather Pass is the sketchiest of them all. In my opinion, it was just, I'll never do that shit again. I mean, I feared for my life the whole fucking time. But anyway,
Jesus.
when you're leading up to the passes, right? Like I said, you're waking up early in the morning and you're hiking in dark for usually a few miles to get to the pass and up over it before the sun hits, before the snow starts melting. So I'd set my alarm for 2 a.m., got up and started hiking in the dark. I was with a group. I mean, generally when you're in the Sierra, there's, even though if you hike alone, there, you can see the headlamps going. Like everybody's got the same idea. We're getting to this pass early, so you can see headlamps going in the dark. So I knew where I was going, but anyway, it wasn't light enough to where I could see this snow bridge. Right, I could hear water all around me, but I never did see the snow bridge. And I took one step out on that thing, and it collapsed. Like
Oh,
I was
man.
literally in the middle of it, and it snapped, and I fell down into the river. I say river, it was a creek, but it was still like waist deep.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is ice cold. You're up there, above 10,000 feet, and it's just ice cold water, and you're surrounded by snow. And this snow bridge collapsed on me, and I went into the water. And luckily, I was able to brace myself with my trekking poles and never lost my balance. But that was one of the scariest moments in the Sierra. There was people around me that could have, helped rescue me if something had happened, if I got washed away. But I very much just like managed to get to the side of the snowbank and pull myself up. And I saw headlamps because I'd screamed or yelled. Some probably yelled "fuck" really loud, and I saw headlamps going running after me. I'm like, dude, what happened? Are you all right? Because it's dark, nobody can see shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, "You're okay?" I'm like, yeah, I'm good." And I never explained what happened, but they had an idea that I'd gone down in that fucking creek. And you hear stories about people getting washed away in those things every year. It's just something to be mindful of, but it just goes to show you, man, your life can end at any fucking moment, and my life could have ended that morning. And then on top of that, I had to go over, Mather Pass. It's like soaking fucking wet, which was just
Yeah,
miserable.
dude.
On top of being sketchy as hell. So, yeah, those river crossings were the worst of it, and that was probably the sketchiest of them all. There was plenty of other ones where, I put this in a YouTube video where I lost my croc and just washed away and shit like that. Like going over those river crossings, a lot of them were sketchy as hell, and I'd never done that shit before. So a lot of times in the videos I didn't put in there, but I would generally, walk upstream or downstream, sometimes a mile off trail just to find the best place to cross. But when you're in a place like the Sierras, your time is limited, and you're only carrying so much food to get to the next town, so you don't have time to dilly dally around. But Yeah, that river crossing and snapping that snow bridge was like, you talk about light flashing before your eyes. That was my moment on the PCT.
Dude, fuck that. I'm glad to hear you're okay. That's fucking sketchy, dude. Like, I haven't really had to. There've been a couple times where, like, not on the AT, on other hikes I've done, where I've had to ford some decently fast rivers, but nothing that looks like it would compare to some of the shit I've heard people dealing with on the PCT. So that's definitely pretty fucking scary. I'm glad you're okay, and yeah, be careful out there, everybody who's going to be hiking the PCT next year. Be careful going through the Sierras.
Yeah, it pays to get up early for those river crossings. You'll find, I noticed this a few times, from the time, from the morning to the night. You wake up in the morning and the water will be extremely lower than in midday. So even though it sucks setting your alarm to go hiking when you're on vacation, it definitely makes it a little easier for you.
Yeah, dude. If it's safer, you should be doing it for sure. Damn. Dude, we're at just about an hour here. I think we're going to kind of wrap it up. Thank you so much for taking the time again, dude. I think it's so awesome that we were able to talk before you went and did the PCT, and now you fucking crushed that shit, and now we're back again. That's so awesome, man. I really appreciate it. Why don't you plug your YouTube and your social media? I'm sure a lot of people listening to this already know that stuff, but just for the few people who don't, they need to go check it out for sure. So yeah, why don't you go ahead and plug all that stuff?
Sure, man. YouTube is IBTAT. The letters IBTAT, which stands for I've Been to a Town. That's my trail name. So if you search that on YouTube, I'll come up, and you can watch every video every day of my hike on the AT as well as the PCT. Now I'm gonna put them in a playlist here eventually, so it's a little easier to watch them as a playlist and in chronological order. But that's the YouTube, and then Instagram is Saved by Mountains, or you can just search IBTAT. It should come up, and I've got thousands of pictures that I still haven't posted. Yeah, I think I took about 6,000 photos on the PCT this year. So,
damn, man.
I've got a lot to go through, but I'll be posting all through the next month or so. I still got photos to post, so check me out there for sure.
Good shit. And as always, I'll have a link to both the YouTube and the Instagram in the show notes if you're too lazy to search things. Yeah, dude, I think that's going to be pretty much it. However, I do have one last question, and this was the most common question that I got in my little Instagram poll I did yesterday. You probably know what's coming. You've probably been asked this 1,000 times, especially as you got close to the end of the PCT, and certainly after you finished it. But you've got two. You've got two of the three, man. When's the third coming? When are you doing the CDT?
So originally, I was going to do it back to back to back. That was the original plan. When I decided to step foot on the Appalachian Trail, I knew I was going to go for the Triple Crown. That was given. And that is still the goal. However, as demanding as the PCT was this year, I think I need a year off. And I think a lot of you can understand that, especially those that followed me towards the end there. It just drained the shit out of me, and my body took a beating, and my mind took a beating. So this year, I'm going to take the year off from long distance hiking. I will be out on the trail hiking, and I will be filming all that, as well as doing some trail magic, being up here in Maine and fairly close to the Appalachian Trail. And on all of you fuckers that are going northbound in the AT in 2020, you're not going to get a lot of trail magic up north, but I'm going to be out there with my dog Roscoe P. Waggletails, and we're going to be grilling hot dogs and passing out sodas and cookies and all that good shit. So we'll hit up some trail magic for all you thru hikers in 2020, and most likely try to make it to trail days in Damascus, Virginia, man. I want to do some mileage on the AT, even though I'm not doing the whole thing. So I'll be out there.
Good shit, man. Good shit. Yeah, get some rest, dude. Enjoy this new fucking sick job that you're going to have, and I'm sure you will get to the CDT real soon here. So yeah, dude, thank you again one more time. This was freaking awesome, and thank you to everybody listening.
Yeah, brother, appreciate it. Nice talking to you.